Hello everyone, it is time for this week's live stream. We are going to be talking about cyanobacteria, but first I want to thank my sponsor, Fritz Aquatics, for supporting the educational channel that I work on week after week to help you guys with your aquariums. I also want to recommend that you subscribe to Coral Magazine. This is the current issue. The next one is going to print soon. So if you are not subscribed, use that link at the bottom, coralmagazine.com/Milev23, and you'll save $2 and change, and it'll be about $37 for a year's subscription to this magazine. That is like half the price of a frag. That is like less than 2 packages of Rod's food. That is like 1/10 of a protein skimmer, etc., etc. If you need any help with your aquarium, I do offer consultation services. You can email me at sales@milevsreef.com and I will help you one-on-one. Roger's Food is a frozen food that you should be able to get at your local fish store. If you're not able to, please let them know that you want it. It's a food that does not blow around in the tank, but you could hold it in your hand and let the fish nibble right from your fingertips, or you can put it in some kind of a feeding clip and let them snack on it, and it will stay in one spot so your fish can consume it. So I'm going to start off the show with something sad, and that is that Flair is no more. Last Saturday, for some strange reason, she was swimming down in the back there below the gorgonians, just staying in that little niche. This is the last video clip that I have of her as far as I recall. I mean, I don't know, I'd have to go through my phone. But as you can see, she never stays still, so photography was always difficult. But she was hanging out in the back, which is really weird. And this was going on for a few hours, and I thought, I've never seen her do this before. And then when it was time to feed at 11 o'clock at night, and usually when I take off the little lid and I've got the food in my hand, she's right there at the top waiting, and she was not. And she stayed in the back, and so I put the food in, and I saw her swim past it instead of devour it. And then I just thought, well, that's strange, and the next thing I know, she was bobbing her face out of the surface of the water like a cork going up and down. I thought, what are you doing? What is wrong with the water in this tank? What is happening? So I immediately grabbed her, put her in a bucket of salt water from my reef tank, thinking maybe this water in this little 27-gallon has suddenly become toxic. I don't know. But she didn't improve at all. She was lying on the bottom of the bucket, gasping. I couldn't understand it. And I tried some of the blue part of Safety Stop, which is methylene blue, hoping that that might give her more oxygen if that's what she was lacking. And she did not improve at all. And within the hour, she was gone. She was dead. So I don't understand what happened. I'm sad, of course, because, you know, this was a very important fish to me. I got her after wanting an interruptus angelfish for 17 years. And she was tank raised by a lady, Karen Britton, in Hawaii. And I was super excited to get this, knowing its birth date, knowing that it was, you know, I knew exactly how old it was. It was less than 3 years old at this point. And it was a juvenile. I mean, it does not have the adult markings. It was not there yet. So there's been different suggestions offered over the last week. I still don't know what happened. She's still in my freezer. Polo Reef has offered to let me ship it to his vet, and maybe they can look at something. But apparently I wasn't supposed to freeze the fish. Maybe just refrigerate it. I don't know. But so I don't know that I'll get an answer. My 2 guesses are going to be that she ate a little bit of dinoflagellate, which I'll be showing you here in a moment, or she got hit by the pistol shrimp. A third thought that popped in my brain, you know, I put in a mixture of multiple foods every single night in a bowl, thaw it all out together, and then squirt some of that into the tank for this fish. Maybe I wasn't providing enough sponge, you know, because there's angelfish diets, and that's never really came to my brain at all. To be honest, I didn't think about it until after she was gone. What if the dietary needs were not exactly what she needed all this time? But it's just crazy to see a fish that's active and happy and swimming around suddenly just completely declining and gone. Just so, I mean, we've heard the stories. People would say, my fish was fine. I went to dinner, came home, and it was dead. I mean, that's kind of what happened here, how quickly she died. I just got to see it all happen because I live here and I'm around this tank all the time. But that was super sad. So just wanted to bring you guys up to date on that. I don't have any answers yet. So the dinos in question are these bubbly things you see in the background. This is something new. My tank had Ostreopsis for the last, since February, or maybe longer. But in February is when I don't know. Let's just say in February I identified it. That's probably when I got the microscope, so it probably was present before that. It was like a brown dusting on the sand that wouldn't go away, and that was kind of it. It was a little bit on the glass, but it just wasn't like bubbly or stringy. This stuff, on the other hand, has a whole new look to it. You know, you can see it's greenish, snotty. It's kind of what I would think of when it comes to dinoflagellates. And maybe she ate a little bit of this. It's not like it's everywhere in the tank. I had to find a patch to get a picture for you. There was some on the filter in the back of the tank, that little box from Siche. And maybe she was nibbling on it and poisoned herself. I just don't know. I have no answer to what happened, but it's, I'm guessing. Because what else can you do? I mean, when something happens, I like to know what it is so I can avoid it happening again. There's another fish in that tank that seems unaffected. Also does not go around nibbling things. Waits for the food to hit the water column. So, I don't know. So let's change topics here for a moment. I want to show you something I saw. This is actually a member from Club Miller's Reef, and his name is Cody Spencer, and he has set up a beautiful fish room for his reef tank. And I just loved the organization of this whole setup. I'm going to guess the aquarium is upstairs. I'm thinking this is a basement. I didn't ask. But look how clean that is. I mean, you've got your dosing bottles in the upper left with a couple of pumps behind it, which might be doing... Oh, no, that's a UV. So you got a UV back there. You've got, of course, all your plumbing coming down from above. You've got a nice shop light above it to see what's going on in the tank. I see a turf scrubber. Of course, there's the sump that has the return pump, the protein skimmer. I see a couple of trays of something there in the center, and there's the fleece rollers. Of course, there's a couple of tridents on the far right wall. There are a couple of Abyss drivers, so he's got some very nice pumps. I see the Apex controller up there with all of its connections. It looks like some controllers, possibly Renko controllers, which would be to do temperature control. And then... Oh, dang it. Of course it did that. Hang on. This was something I was running into. That's why the show started late today, because it was not playing nicely. It kept showing the same thing in every slide. So this is the other area. And this is a mixing station for saltwater and freshwater. And then on the left there is the sink area, which has a regular faucet. It has a sprayer. There's some kind of a timer up there. All of his test kits are up above. There's a stirring thingy back there, like a magnetic stirrer. Can't zoom in any tighter. But, I mean, just look at it. And is that a garbage disposal under the sink? What is he flushing down the sink? Anyway, beautiful job, Cody. And Cody Spencer did a fantastic job here. And I like how he's able to store his buckets under the saltwater stand. He has nice walk-around area. It's really, really clean. Like, oh my goodness, I want it. And then I shot this video for you guys a few days ago. This is in the Blenny Cube, the little 1-gallon tank. There's a little Blenny. And, he lives in one of the many holes of that Barnacle cluster. So I'm just going to let this run while I talk. That little tank, I do nothing. I just make sure it's not evaporating too much. And I'll add a little, 40 milliliters of fresh water to maintain salinity. There's a filter in the back, which I showed you guys 1 or 2 weeks ago. And she will come out of her hole to eat something. That should be in this video. It's about a 2-minute long video, so I'm just going to riff for a moment. But this is a Barnacle Blenny, and don't ask me the Latin because I don't know it by heart. But it's on the cover of Coral Magazine up there on the wall. Here, I'll just grab the magazine. I did something creative here. I got myself a magazine holder to hold my issues of Coral. And... this guy is the Hypsoblennius invimar. So that's the Latin name for the tessellated blenny. And it's just such a cutie. And when I do squirt food in, she pounces, chomp, chomp, chomp. So I don't know where we are in this video. Well, near the end. I think this is the part where she gets out of that hole and shows herself briefly. She moves to a new hole. Give it a second. Here she comes, I think. Don't make me a liar. Maybe this is the wrong video clip. She's not going to do it, is she? Oh, there she goes. See, that was it. You had to look. If you blink, you miss it. She's that quick. But now she's in a different hole. And she likes her little cave. So I still haven't decided what else to put in there. But for now, it's fine. That is under white light. I took the blue light off and put the white light on. So that's that. All right, let's talk today about cyanobacteria. So I've got a couple of pictures here to show you. First of all, what is cyanobacteria? Cyanobacteria is completely normal. It exists in freshwater, brackish water, which is slightly salty, and of course seawater or ocean water. And it exists down deep. When the scientists and mining companies and the two collide, they will find it crazy deep in the strata of the earth, and there's like an entire blanket of cyanobacteria that they come across. It's been around for millions of years, and it's just like, wow, everywhere we go there's cyanobacteria. And it's actually in your tank all the time. It's not that you caught it from something or that you got it from, adding a frag, or it came in with the fish that you put in your tank, or the cleanup crew did it. No, nothing does it. It is completely normal. What we don't like is when it becomes visible. While it's invisible, we don't care that it exists. It's bacteria and it's just doing its thing. But when it blooms, and that tends to be seasonal, it's not like it just happens around the clock, but when it blooms and becomes visible, then we start to hate it because it's blanketing things. It starts getting in the way. So here's a picture of it inside one of my aquariums a long time ago. And you can see a money cowrie in the center there, and the money cowrie actually eats cyanobacteria. So if you have a few of those money cowries, you can put them down on the sand and let them go consume your cyano. Another look of cyanobacteria would be this, which is how it appears sometimes on the rockwork. And you might think, oh, that's coralline. No. Coralline is that purple stuff. But the red stuff, that will blow off with a turkey baster or a power head. Won't really blow off when you fan your hand back and forth. It's holding on a little bit better than that, but you can nudge it off with a few blasts of water. And that snail there did not care for it whatsoever. It was just walking through or over it. And then finally, this is probably another way of looking at it that people are used to seeing. It's red, it's bubbly, it's kind of gross, and it's just a thing. I mean, it just happens. So first of all, there's a product that gets rid of it. That's the good news. And this is it right here, Red Cyano RX. I sell it, so if you need it, I think it's $16 or $18 for this. It's a little jar inside here with a spoon. Yes, Jack, it's cyanobacteria killer. Awesome, right? So here is your powder. Here is your cute little spoon. And then you'll put in the appropriate amount for your size aquarium. But I don't want you to just do that. I want you to listen to me for a minute here first. While I'm mentioning products, I just want to mention this is a combo pack that I sell, which has got the cyano remover and it's got the phosphate remover that I like, Phosphate RX. So that's another choice that's on my website if you need both for controlling cyano in your tank or lowering phosphate levels. Now, I told you how it's invisible. I told you how it's seasonal. And it tends to be one of those things that will be with you for a very long time if you do nothing to remove it. So you have to do something. You can't ignore it. Now, some people will try different techniques. Like they'll leave the lights off for 3 days and say that'll make it go away. It may. It may make it go away. Or it may just kind of weaken it and it kind of disappears. And then when the lights come back on to the normal schedule, it just kind of comes back to life again, like it resurrected itself. So there's a chance of that. You could try siphoning it out, which is a good idea, but whatever's left behind may grow into more. So that's why there's a chance you're going to need to do a little bit more, like use these products I was talking about. Another product on the market, I don't sell it, but you can buy, is going to be ChemiClean. It's been around for a super long time, totally works. As far as I know, the ingredients are exactly the same, but I don't actually know what's in them. I just know they work, and so I use them, and I recommend them, and I don't fear them. And if you have to use it once or twice a year, that is not cheating. One of the biggest cliches that irritates me the most is whenever someone says, I have cyanobacteria, and people will say, oh, well, you need to find the underlying cause. It's like, the underlying cause is that it exists. But I mean, I understand what they're trying to say. They're trying to say, oh, you may not have enough flow, your nutrients are out of balance, you put in too much food. I mean, yes, we can be the cause of many things that happen in our tank. But ultimately, cyano is something that can and will happen. And if it happens from time to time, you just deal with it. You just treat the tank, you solve the problem, and then you go on with your life. And if you don't treat the problem, if you ignore it, hoping to go away on its own, like let itself burn out, it could take 3, 6, 7 months to go away. And then when it returns, you're like, it's back again. So much better to handle it in 3 to 5 days rather than to let it be an ongoing problem. Now, does it harm the livestock? Does it hurt the fish? It does not hurt the fish at all. I don't know of any fish I've ever suffered from cyanobacteria. It can kind of cause a problem for corals if it blankets over them, if it covers them, because then this bacteria is creating like a shield from the lighting, and the coral beneath it is getting smothered. So in that case, again, the turkey baster to blow it off of the corals to get it off of those so that they still can, get flow and oxygenation and lighting would be important. But it's not like this toxic stuff that will murder your livestock. That's not the case. When it comes to treating the tank, my recommendation is written out on my website. I'll go into it now. So if you're going to buy Red Cyano RX, if you just scroll down, there's a Mila's recommendation, and I've put it there, a decade ago. And it's a very simple procedure. I go beyond what the packaging recommends, and so that's why I'm going to spell it out for you here, because I want you to have a nice clean tank and like it. I don't want you to be frustrated and hate looking at your tank. I mean, I'm kind of going through that with Caitlin's Reef because these dinos just seemingly will not go away. And, now I'm going into a new phase of them. It's like, oh, come on. I just want to be able to look at the tank and enjoy it. So if you're trying to remove cyanobacteria, the first thing you want to do is siphon out as much as you possibly can. Okay? I would then remove any kind of equipment like a protein skimmer. Don't run carbon, don't run UV, just stop all those things. Just have a body of water that has normal flow going through it. If your tank has a fleece roller, that's fine. If you're using a filter sock, that's fine. But we don't want any mechanical filtration operating, such as a protein skimmer. We don't want the carbon to remove the chemical we're putting in to get rid of the cyanobacteria. And we don't want to run UV because I don't think it's going to help. So just turn it off for a few days. It's fine. Then you've siphoned it all out. You mix up your solution, you pour it in the tank, and that's it. You just wait. And after 72 hours, look and see if it's gone. And if it's gone, you're done. All you have to do is a 25% water change or bigger, and then go ahead and turn everything back on again. Run the carbon, turn on the skimmer, do all that. If you still see cyano present in the aquarium, then I recommend you dose again. Don't do the water change yet. Just dose again and let the chemical work on the remainder of it, because then in about 2 days flat, now a total of 5 days of treatment, they should be completely gone. And now you can do your big water change, turn on the protein skimmer, run carbon, turn on the UV, whatever else you're going to do. But if you do it in that order, you will literally solve this problem in less than a week, and you'll be able to enjoy your tank again. Now, the one caveat that I will not neglect to mention is that after using ChemiClean or Red Cyano RX, is that your protein skimmer can and will abundantly overflow. It's one of these things, it's a reaction to the medication, it's a reaction to the dead cyanobacteria. So we are going to have to deal with that, but if you handle it over about 6 hours, you can get that behind you as well. So first we're getting rid of the cyano, now we're controlling the protein skimmer. And the skimmer itself, like I said, it's going to overflow. So the first thing you want to do is, if you can adjust any knobs on the protein skimmer to lower the water level in the body of the skimmer so that it's less productive foam-wise. So it's pushing less bubbles upward. But if you do that, you may still find you're getting zillions of bubbles, and that's okay. The next thing you want to do is the collection cup, if it has some kind of a drain on the side, is run a hose to a nearby bucket. We want to make sure that all that stuff that's bubbling up, even though it's clear, it's not green, it's not brown, it's not ugly, it just looks like water. You're like, why are you doing this? You should be fine. Just let it export into the bucket, and then whatever you remove, so if a gallon comes out, put a gallon of new salt water in, and just keep repeating the process until the protein skimmer settles down. And once the protein skimmer settles down, at that point, you can readjust the protein skimmer back to its normal water height, whatever that may normally be for your aquarium. And now you've gotten rid of the cyano, you've got the skimmer back under control, and you can go on with your life, and everything is good. I do want to mention also that cyanobacteria is it's photosynthetic, which means it is visible when the lighting is on. It becomes present, and then at night it disappears. And I had a client that told me, hey, Mark, I put that stuff in, and that night it was gone. It was a miracle. I was like, no, it's not. I'm sorry. I wish it was. That would be awesome. He's like, no, I'm telling you, it's gone. I was like, no, your lights are off. It has gone to sleep. It is dormant. It is waiting for the lights to come on. Tomorrow, it's going to be back again. And it may look worse. It may look better. Who knows? And that's how it works. So if you look at your tank at night, you're like, it's gone. I did this fantastic thing. That's not the case. You just need to give it some more time, let it completely fade away, during the lighting cycle. That's what we want. And then it'll be behind you. But other than that, there's not much more to say about it. Yeah. Here, let me take some questions from you. I'll switch this picture out to the other one because I like the one with the money cowrie. It's prettier. Put this back here. And let me take some questions on cyano before we go on with our next topic. Also, while I'm waiting for questions, I want to let you know about upcoming events. There are a lot of them happening. And I had 3 more clubs contact me asking me if I could come speak on November 2nd or November 3rd. I'm like, no, I can't. I'm already booked on November 1st. So I am unavailable because that weekend is already tied up. But, okay, so October 19th, the main Reef Expo and Frag Swap is happening. I'll be there. And then November 1st, I will be at the Long Island Reef Association Club meeting, giving a talk there. And then I'll visit Joe at the Long Island Aquarium because I got to see it. And then I'll probably go visit Polo Reef because I got to see how it looks different than it did 18, 19 months ago. And then on November 2nd and 3rd is Aquashella Daytona, which is in Florida. I went last year and had a great time. I still have not released my video yet about Aquashella where was it? Chicago. So I will get that updated and get that uploaded to the channel, and that way you will see a preview of what Aquashella Daytona will look like because it's the same show in different locations, and that way you can see why you should go and you can make plans to go. It is basically just a little bit less than a month from today, so if you haven't made plans yet, you should plan on it. And then November 9th is the Boston Reefers Society Fragsgiving. And I will be at that event as well. So there are some things right there. Let's see about cyano. See if you guys had any questions here. So Chris L. said ChemiClean is the only thing that helped me. And then Northern Ohio Reef Enthusiast said, I find a blackout does help fight the outbreak. Yeah, that was a technique that a person on Reef Central said many, many years ago. It was kind of shocking to us. He just said, turn off the lights for 3 days, once a month. And I was like, what? Because I have a tank full of corals, and we know that the corals need the light. And he did that, and his tank always looked beautiful. And he did it every single month. Every month, he chose to turn off the lighting for 3 days. And I was like, that's crazy. But then his tank looked so good, but it was all softies. It wasn't a demanding tank, too. So here I am with my 280-gallon reef at the time. That was a mixed reef. It had clams, it had anemones, but it had tons of SPS. It had encrusting. It had everything. Okay, it's just everything. So I turned off the lights, and I watched my tank like a hawk. And the first day, I didn't really see any change. I mean, of course, the lights are off. It's not like I can see much. And I would turn the lights on just to feed the tank at night. So for 10 minutes, I flip on the lights and let the fish see. If you don't even want to do that, if you want to turn on the light in the room just to give the fish some ambient lighting to feed the fish, you totally can. It does not need to be full-fledged, 100% LED blast power. It just needs to be some light so they can see the food. And then on the second day, I looked at my tank, and there wasn't much change, and the protein skimmer hadn't done anything yet. Because in that case, now I'm not talking about using chemicals. I mean, just lights out. The second day, the skimmer was still doing its thing, but pulling out a little bit of skimmate. The third day, not much happened, but that was the end of 3 days. On the fourth day, my collection cup was full, and it's a huge collection cup. So this much solution in one day, it's like, wow. And I turned on all the lights, and I was like, all right, let's see what happens now. Let's see what the tank looks like. And the cool thing, there was a cool thing, but there was some bad stuff. The cool thing is that all the glass of the aquarium, the glass was crystal clear. All four sides, without me using a cleaning magnet, no scraping, nothing. It was like brand new glass. Like, whoa! Now that was a nice side effect. I really liked that. I did lose a couple of SPS corals to the lack of lighting. They were little frags. But it was just like any loss was still a loss and made me kind of annoyed. But I was looking at my tank and there was no cyano. The glass was clean. The skimmer pulled out a bunch of skimmate. And I lost a couple little frags. Like, all right, whatever. Good enough. But I never did it again. But it is an option. If you want to just go chemical free, if you want to go all natural, you could turn off the lights. You do not need to wrap the tank in a cocoon of black plastic bags. You don't have to wrap it in cardboard. You don't need to seal the top. Just don't let the lights run. Either use your app to turn them off or unplug them or tell your controller to just turn them off. But then set some kind of a reminder somewhere so you know when you turn them off to know when they need to turn on again. And that way you can remove them. Reefkeeper says, so many people are anti-ChemiClean. I've used it numerous times over the years and it's always worked and never caused any issues for me. Okay, so I will tell you, I am personally aware of 3 times an issue happened using ChemiClean. And that was because the person did not siphon out, these persons did not siphon out all the cyano before they did it. They had a tank full of red and pink everywhere, just like blankets and blankets of it. And they just added the chemical to the water and they, turned everything off, that you would normally turn off during a treatment. And then the water turned pink. And I was like, what? And I said, yeah, it was pink. I thought that was weird. I'm like, oh my God, you should have immediately done something or told us what's happening because there was so much mass of cyanobacteria that when the chemical was killing it, it was actually breaking down in the water column and causing chaos, and they lost livestock, they lost fish, they lost corals, they lost all kinds of stuff. But only 3 people out of the thousands upon thousands of aquariums that I have personally followed the saga of using a product to get rid of cyanobacteria. But yeah, there's been that one in a blue moon guy who's like, yeah, I lost everything because of that product. I'll never use it again. I'm like, oh, you just used it wrong. You should have siphoned out all the cyano you could reach before you started. It doesn't take long. It comes off so easily, and it would have prevented you from losing any of your corals. Northern Ohio Reef Enthusiast says, is aeration needed during treatment? I've never done that. I've never felt the need to add an air stone. But if you want to add an air stone, the packaging does recommend it. So you can do that. You can put in a nice weighted ceramic air stone hooked up to an air pump with a check valve, set the air pump somewhere where it can't fall off the shelf or the top of your tank or whatever, and just let it blow some bubbles in the tank. You may have a power head that has a Venturi tube, which you could then connect the tubing to it and let it suck air in and blow bubbles into the tank. That's another option. I don't know why I've never needed it, because I've used it so many times. Let's just pretend I used it twice a year and I've been in the hobby since 1997. Now, that's more, mathematically, that's way more than I've done. But I've probably used it 15 times, 20 times, never had an incident happen. So I wouldn't be scared to tell you to use it because I've got personal hands-on experience. And my tanks tend to have quite a bit of flow in them. My surface is always rippling on the top of my aquarium, and I am not dealing with stagnant type water situations. But if your entire aquarium hinges off the return pump, for example, or like this little 1 gallon tank right here, it has one little pump. If that pump stops, that water's stagnant. I mean, that's it. Nothing is moving in there, and I hopefully will catch it and make a change, make a correction, and take care of my little guy, my little fish. But if that was the only thing in my tank and I turned it off, yeah, an air stone would absolutely be critical to keeping that little fish alive and healthy, because the oxygen levels would plummet. Joaquin said, I beat Cyano naturally. Actually, he's yelling it at us. It took longer than it took to get. Yeah, it takes a long, long time to make it go away naturally. And I've had people that did. They said, I waited 3 months. I added more flow to the tank. I dosed nitrate. I did this, I did that. And I waited. It's sort of like me with a dinoflagellate situation in my tank, right? I waited forever for it to go away. And finally, the person then just did my advice, took the product, used it, and got rid of it in a matter of days and said, I should have listened to Mark 4 months ago. And yeah, I mean, you shouldn't have to hate your tank. You should be able to like it. I mean, this 27-gallon that's got the dino problem going on, all I want to do is do a water change daily until it's gone. That's all I want to do. I just want to siphon it out and just keep going until I've resolved it. Because this whole let the UV do it, dose this product, wait for that increased flow, do this, do that, don't do water changes, increase pH. Dose pods, put in phytoplankton. There's all these things I have to do. It's like I just want to clean. I want to remove anything that's dirty, clean it. I want to siphon the sand bed. I want to change the water and move on with my life. That's all I want to do. Also, I wanted to mention that I did ask this on Instagram and Facebook about Dino X, because, that's one of those products that's been on the market now for some time. And I was thinking I'd use that in Caitlin's Reef to remove the dinoflagellate situation. But unfortunately, the first thing I saw in the instructions was to skim heartily or skim excessively. And I was like, I don't even have a skimmer on that tank. How am I going to do this? So I asked people, because I can't get a hold of anyone at Fauna Marin. And I just said, thoughts, opinions, and everyone's like, yeah, you got to skim. You have to. So I'm like, Now, I do have a skimmer I could dangle off the back of the tank. Yet another thing jammed onto that tank trying to solve a problem. Could do that. But then there was quite a few people said, don't use it. So I'm like, ugh. So today I will grab my microscope and I will grab that little bit of blob and I will stick it on a slide and see what the heck it is, and then see if there's something else I can use before I open the bottle of Dino X. Because, it was $38.50. It wasn't cheap. And, actually, I was like, whatever. It costs what it costs. But then when I got it, it was this big. I was like, wait, why was that $38? This is 250 milliliters. I mean, that is nothing. So, I mean, seriously, my tank is so small, I'm going to be using, 2 milliliters at a time? But you're supposed to use it after lights out every other day for a maximum of 30 days. So that means 15 treatments. And that's supposed to make this stuff go away. And I was like, man, I'm fine with that. If I have to squirt in 2 milliliters every other day, I'll do that. I just want this done. I'm sick of waiting. I want the tank to be pretty. I want to not dislike it when I look at it. I don't want to just clean the glass and hate what's inside. I want to clean the glass and love what's inside. It's a logical thing, right? So, in the meantime, I've done nothing but ask questions. I'm still holding on the bottle for right now. Okay. Let me pull this off the screen. What else do we have today? That's it. That was all my topics. Look, the live stream's done. We have nothing left. Now, at this point, if you want to ask any question under the sun, you totally can. I will go ahead and put this on our screen for today. And we'll look at what other comments are in here from you, the audience. By the way, while we're waiting, I will show you a nice little preview, because I haven't shown you yet. I usually sit on these things, but this right here is our next cover of Coral Magazine. So if you are not a subscriber, you should subscribe. If you are a subscriber, you should ask a friend to subscribe. Just so you know, I am the executive editor at Coral Magazine. That means I'm literally choosing what articles goes in the magazine, and I am in charge of the team to make sure it all gets done on time for print. And when I come to you and say you should subscribe, I'm telling you when to subscribe so you'll get that issue. If you don't do it in time, what'll happen is you'll say, oh yeah, I needed to do that, and you'll subscribe, and then you'll say, hey Mark, I still haven't gotten an issue yet. And I will ask, when did you buy it? And they'll tell me the date. And I'll say, yep, you were 3 days too late, or you were 7 days too late. And like, what do you mean? I was like, now you got to wait for the next issue, which is in 2 more months. It's a very long window. So I always tell people subscribe immediately during that window before print, so that way you get this issue that we're working on. This one is about seabeds or the substrate. And I know a lot of people these days like to have a bare bottom tank. And this issue may convince you that sand is not evil. You may actually think, I didn't consider that. There's an article in there about crown of thorns starfish. That's really interesting. And wow. And we have a really great story about a public aquarium in Germany, a huge one, like 200,000 gallons or something, that has a black tip reef shark in it, with all the SPS corals and the zillions of anthias and stuff. And it's a great, great story. And I hope you guys will like it. It's actually a new feature for Coral Magazine that I thought I wanted to incorporate a year ago. And I went to Matt Peterson and said, hey, has Coral ever featured public aquariums? Because we have all this. And they're like, no, never. I'm like, why? Why not? And he was like, oh. I was like, well, I want to do that. I want to do 1 or 2 public aquariums a year. So this is our first one. It's not even in the U.S. But I've got another one already in the works that will happen sometime during 2025. And that one is from the U.S. I hope you'll enjoy that story as well. It should be a great one. There you go. Now you have been teased. All right, let's see what we got here question-wise. The Lone Aquarist just said, I missed the beginning, so I'm not sure. Is Mark trying to use Battle Cyano with Dino X? No. No, I already talked about Cyano. I'm done. Oh, nice. Northern Ohio Reef Enthusiast said several of our club members are now subscribed from winning our NOR Tank of the Month contest. I bet NOR stands for Northern Ohio Reef Enthusiasts. Michael said, I got cyano when I was carbon dosing with vodka, and I siphoned it out and quit dosing vodka. That does happen. That is one of the side effects of vodka dosing. You could literally cause a cyanobacteria bloom, and it's, again, because you have increased the bacteria quantity in the aquarium to create that bloom. Let's just make up imaginary numbers. If your tank normally has 1 million cyanobacterias, that's probably not the right way to describe it, but let's just say there's 1 million, and you dose vodka, and now you have 10 million or 100 million, boom, you get the red bloom. That's what happens. And that is a side effect. It's a bummer, but in the end, it's if you're trying to control the nitrate, that is one method. And I have done vodka dosing in the past. I remember wondering, and I don't remember the answer, but I remember wondering if you are dosing vodka and you cause a cyano bloom, and then you treat your tank to get rid of the cyano, I wondered if you should stop dosing vodka for those days, or if you just keep letting that add to the tank automatically, regardless of what you're doing about the cyanobacteria issue. But that was such a long time ago, I cannot possibly answer that. I don't know. I remember asking the author of the article about about vodka dosing, because he was a friend of mine, and I was like, hey, so what's the deal here? If I need to deal with this, what's going to happen to all the hard work I've done building up my vodka dosing to a certain level, and now I suddenly stop? Because I knew if you were going to stop dosing vodka, that ideally you should taper off, and then if you're going to resume, you have to taper back upward again, and you can't just go back to your full dose, right out of the gate. You can't do that. So, but I don't remember what the answer was. It's too long ago. I got to start thinking about things on a live camera. Mr. Reef Buster says, will you be in New York next month? I'd like to meet up at your event. Do you plan on going to any events in New Jersey? I will be on Long Island November 1st, 2nd probably, and maybe head home on the 3rd. And like I said, I'm planning to hit the Long Island Aquarium, do the Lyra meeting, of course, on Friday night, and then possibly, the aquarium and Polo Reef, I think, are several hours apart, whether you're taking a train or a car. And it's a long island, so there's a distance in between. But I do plan to be there for a couple days there and enjoy it. I had considered coming in on Thursday, but that's Halloween, and I was thinking the aquarium probably has something. Polo Reef's probably giving out millions of pieces of candy that day. So instead, I'll show up on Friday. Maybe I'll see the aquarium on Friday, do the talk Friday night, and then Saturday head to Polo Reef, and then catch a flight Sunday morning or Saturday evening or something like that. Haven't locked that in yet. I still got to get that organized. But no, I don't think I'll head over to New Jersey because that's actually really far. Last time I was in New York, which was a year and a half ago, I did that. I went from Manhattan. I think I popped into New Jersey, or maybe I didn't. But then I had to go all the way to Long Island. It was a lot. There was a lot of traveling during the few days I was there, and I was really wiped out after it was over. There's a whole bunch of comments that came in here while I was chatting before. Kyle says, I've had great results dealing with cyano, dinos, some type of algae by replenishing the pod population. Sometimes part of the ecosystem is just missing. That's exactly it. He's right. A lot of times there's an imbalance, and that's why we try to fill that void, or we use a chemical to solve the problem, but we haven't really resolved the imbalance itself. So putting something back in can be the trick, and adding pods and then phytoplankton to support the pods may oftentimes help with certain things. But as you guys know, I put in 1 million pods in Caitlin's Reef to get rid of the Ostreopsis, and I thought it was working, but then it's not really gone, and I did the phyto thing, and the pods are still on the glass, and I'm now dealing with something else. It's just not going perfectly, and it annoys me. Joaquin says, in my 5 years in the hobby, I realized I've gotten more of this algae with a sand bottom. As soon as I went bare bottom, I've had less issues. I've only had to use the product 2 times. Will Marr said he used razor treatment for 6 days, and he's good to go. And Kyle says, I've used DinoX before. It definitely works. I didn't experience any problems, but it's definitely the nuclear option. At this point, I'm ready for nuclear. Reefkeeper says, I used DinoX after fighting dinos for 1.5 years. It's what finally worked. I lost 1 torch, I used it on my frag tank, and I lost several acropora. But I skimmed both tanks. I'm glad Santana Reef is here because he says the show can now proceed. And then Joaquin asked, what's your take on ammonia dosing? I'm still curious about it. I haven't gotten into that yet. That was a big article by Michael Paletta, and it's interesting, but I don't have anything beyond that. Luke says, does protein skimmers remove more phosphate or nitrate? Well, it's going to definitely remove waste, dissolved organic compounds. It can remove phytoplankton. I would say that it can remove the nutrients that lead to nitrate and phosphate, but I don't really think either one is removed straightforward with the protein skimmer, because lots of people have protein skimmers, but they still have to run GFO for phosphate, or they're doing big water changes for nitrate. So it's really not exporting enough to keep those two in check. And that's why we have to use alternate choices like vodka dosing or a sulfur denitrator or phosphate RX or one of those things to lock that in. Michael says, when you move a big tank, are they prone to leaking? When you move them, I just bought a 265-gallon tank, and I'm going to get it tomorrow, and I'm nervous about moving it. It's a used tank that had... ... Is there more? That had a small leak before. Ooh. You had to end with that. That's a chance. There's a chance something could go wrong. Anytime anyone moves an aquarium, there's a chance something bad can happen. And one of the things I see more than causing a leak is someone dropping it and chipping some of the glass off. It's the worst. It's like you're dealing with glass, and you know that there's a chance that it could break because it's made of glass. And yet, invariably, it just seems to always happen. I see these posts all the time. Here's a chip on the corner, here's a chip on the top, here's a chip in the middle of the side. And it's just like, do you think it'll still hold water? And we're guessing through the internet how much tensile strength your glass still has. It's really important to be cognizant of everything you're doing when you move an aquarium. And, I have certain procedures I go through. I always recommend the suction cups that are made for giant pieces of glass. These are the kind that are this big around, and you put them on the side with a handle, and you pump a plunger, and it keeps plunging until it finally stops. The plunger stops popping out, it stays in, and now you have full suction on the tank, and you can grab it and hold on. And one suction cup is the equivalent of 2 people. It's a very strong device. And having multiples to move a tank, like yours is a 265, mine was a 280. We used probably 8 suction cups to move that aquarium. And I had 10 people here because it's big and it's heavy. But you said this one leaked in the past. You didn't say where it was leaking from. Could be down low, could be up high. But regardless, the tank will be shifting as you're racking on it, pulling on it, letting it down, lifting it up. So things can happen. But sometimes you just have to move an aquarium. You have no choice. And you just have to go with it and hope for the best. And that would be my first thought. I would not worry, oh no, I need to move this aquarium. Will I cause a leak? That would never happen in my brain. Not in a million years. But eventually, at some point, every tank does leak. That is the sad reality of aquariums. I mean, there's just no guarantee it'll hold water for the rest of its life. It just too many times I've said that silicone is like black magic. So I would just say go with your gut. Be super cautious. Try to fully support the tank as best you can. Avoid any kind of ways of damaging it, chipping it, slamming into a wall, dropping on the floor, any of those things. Even when you load it in the car, how do you load it? I would put it on top of a solid surface, but I'd feel even better if it was sitting on a sheet of plywood, for example, because you got a little bit of plywood cushion underneath it to have less impact on the base of the tank. If you're going around the corners, and you're going over doorway thresholds, like in and out of the house, I like to put it on 4-wheel dollies, and I will take the dollies. I'll put 2 on the floor. We set the tank on it, and then I take those ratchet straps and I strap around the aquarium to hold the dolly. And I ratchet it, but I don't like ratchet it so hard that I'm pulling the walls of the tank in. What I'm doing is I'm making sure that the dolly stays with the aquarium, so when you have to lift it up and get it over the door frame, the furniture mover moves with it. And then you push another foot or 2, and then you lift the back end of the tank over the threshold of the household doorway, and then the dolly goes with it again. Because otherwise, you don't want the tank to slide off the dollies. You want them to stay as cohesive as possible. I have done it where I had to take the tank and turn it on its side. So now the opening is pointing one way and the base of the tank is over here, which means this side will be way heavier than this side because this is an opening. It's hollow. So I have actually taken like 2x6s or 2x4s, and I've cut the exact width of the aquarium and stood it in there like a strut, so that way when we're pushing it, that top piece is not hanging down or letting the ratchet strap pull it down, because I don't want to damage the aquarium. So I would use that strut or two inside the aquarium to keep the integrity, and then we would carefully move it out. And because sometimes the tank, like if a tank is 36 inches wide but 30 inches tall, the doorway is a little bit less than 36 inches wide. So if you turn the tank on its side, you have that 30-inch wide aquarium going out the door. It'll fit. But if you try to go flat-wise, it won't. It won't fit out the door, even if you remove the door off the hinges. A 36-inch door is a little bit less wide than 36, unfortunately, because of the trim, the casing, all the parts that make up a door. And so it's best just turn the tank on its side. And then when you're putting it on its side, ideally put the back down on the dollies, not the front piece. But if you have to put the front piece face down for some reason, maybe because there's plumbing on the back wall or some kind of thing that is in the way, then I would put like towels on top of the furniture dolly or the pink sheet foam, something that will not scratch my front glass. Because again, we're trying to move this delicate aquarium, even though it's heavy as can be. We want to move it like it's super crazy fragile. We want to be very cognizant of it. We want to make sure no one gets hurt. Man, let me tell you guys, I don't know if I discussed this with my story. Last year, around this time, I did the 400-gallon setup series. And I did like 8 or 9 videos talking about how I set up the 400-gallon. But when we picked up the 280-gallon tank from the house that it was in, which was only like a quarter of a mile away from my house. It was very convenient where it was, but it's still, every moment sucked moving that tank. It was so hard. It was so heavy. Okay, so here's the thing. We're in the living room, all of us. It's a big group. I've got a U-Haul truck in the front with a big ramp that comes out the base of the truck. It just ramps down. So the idea was that we would roll the tank up and into there. We'd grab barrels and put them in there with water or rock or whatever it is we were moving. Of course, we'd get the huge heavy sump that was made of glass that held 80 gallons of water. So you can imagine it was really, really heavy. Even empty, it was just ridiculous. It took 4 people to move the sump. But here's the thing. We've got the tank off the stand, off the steel stand, and down on the furniture movers. And we're rolling. And no, that's not true. We were carrying it. And we went from where it was in the living room into what was basically a narrow type of hallway where there was this wall that went up. I think it was like brick or something. It was inside the house, but it was like this brick facade or something. I just know there was a wall there. And because the hallway was narrow and the tank was, almost the entire width of the hallway, you could only have 2 people on one end and 2 on the other, but the tank was crazy heavy for 4 people. So the extra people that were on the sides had to peel off as we started to navigate this hallway. And these guys that were kind of standing around like, what do I do? You guys okay? And I'm like, go around. And I wanted them to go around this fake wall and grab the other end. But there was nowhere to go. I made the mistake of not looking to see what was around that corner because I was more fixated on get the tank out of the wall, off the stand and out the door and into the truck. That's all I cared about. I didn't really think about the architecture of the home. But they said there's nowhere to go. And I could see the guy on the other side through the glass was losing it. You could tell, the beads of sweat, the eyes get a little wider. I mean, it was terrifying. And I was just like, you got to go around. He's like, there's nowhere to go. And I just said, go under. I told these guys to go under the tank that we can barely hold on to get out the front door to grab on the other end. I mean, I needed them to not even limbo, like run and slide, like running for first base and get under that tank and out the other side and grab on before that guy on the other side lost it. And I was thinking somebody's going to die today. I mean, it was so bad. I can't believe I did this. But I was like, go under. And the guy went under. The other guy was like, really? I'm like, no! He goes under too. And they grab the other end and they assist that guy who was losing it. And they've got it hoisted again. And then somehow we had to pivot this to get it out that door because that hallway was so narrow. And I feel like what we did, I think we finally gave up. Now that we had enough humans on both ends, we got it down on the ground and we were turning it. But as we did, on top of the threshold of the, going out of the house, there was like that rubber thing that's supposed to like keep any air from blowing under the door. And as we're turning this heavy tank, that rubber thing is just peeling right off. I'm like, oh my God, we're tearing up the house. And then, we got it out the door and we got it up the ramp and we got into the truck, and thank God no one got hurt. And then, of course, I'm trying to fix this piece of rubber before I get yelled at from the homeowner. But yeah, that was an incident. And that one, there were no suction cups. It was when it came time to, and then when we pulled up to my house with the U-Haul and all the people, and they pour out of the pickup trucks and they pour out of the U-Haul, and they all show up at the front door. No one really wants to touch it again. They're done. It sucked. They were they were tired. They said things like, "So when does the second shift get here?" I was like, "Come on, guys. We just gotta get this in the house, and I gotta return this U-Haul, and you can go on with your lives." No one wanted to touch that tank a second time, but we did get it out of the U-Haul and into the house and on the stand. And then, of course, that day I probably lost 10 good friends. Not death. They just didn't want to be my friend ever again. So. Mina says, not sure if you touched on this or not, but wouldn't a cyanobacteria be considered an active infection? Also, there are some conflicting information online. Is ChemiClean an antibiotic? I don't know what's in it. I've never known. I don't actually care. I really don't. I know there's people out there that want to know everything about everything. For me, all I want to know is, does it work? How does it work? How do I make it work? And then solve my problem. That's all I care about. I've never tried to find out. I've read lots of different posts over the years. People have always said, it's got erythromycin in it. Okay. It does. It doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't matter. All I know is it gets rid of cyano. So there's that. But an active infection, no. It's like I said, it's always present in the aquarium. It's just when there's too much of it and becomes a bloom is when we dislike it. When it's invisible and just doing its thing, no one cares. Northern Ohio Reef Enthusiast says, isn't Dino X a algicide? I think it said something like that. Yeah. I think I read that on the bottle. And then W. Mars says, Razor from Brightwell is an algicide. Reef Keeper brought to my attention that I missed that Casual Reef Keeping has become a member for 25 months. Kyle, good job. That is a long time. That is more than 2 years. Mr. Reef Buster says, on my next 120-gallon tank, I plan on using a fleece roller mat. What tank size skimmer should I pair it with, since I was told if you use a roller mat, you should get a skimmer rated for a smaller tank? Man, I would never do that. I would get the skimmer size rated for your aquarium, because while you may like the roller mat initially, if at some point you don't like it, you still need the skimmer. And if you were to, like I said, get rid of the roller mat, if you just say, I'm not doing this anymore, I don't need it, then you got to buy a new skimmer. So just get the skimmer you need, and you can adjust how much it's, a wet skim versus a dry skim. You can adjust for how much it's exporting. You can put the skimmer on a timer. You can put the fleece roller on some kind of a timer too. I mean, there's a lot of different ways of doing this stuff, but ultimately, we do need some kind of nutrients in the aquarium. I know that there's an ongoing desire that everything be pristine and clean and new and gorgeous. I get it. But not everything's evil. And with so many aquariums these days struggling to have enough nitrate and enough phosphate, it could be that our filtration has become better than it should be. And so we need to kind of dial it back. Now, most fleece roller systems I've seen can't handle all the water draining out of the tank. There's just too much water. And so we're only getting a part of the drain. And part of the drain is going straight into the skimmer section for its job. On my tank specifically, when I was running the Clarisy, the biggest one they had, I can't remember the model number, I had a 1-inch pipe going into it, but my tank has 4.5-inch drains. And I was like, all right, how's that going to work? So I ended up taking 1.5-inch drain and converting it all the way down to 1 inch to go into the Clarisy. But I had 3 other drains that were doing sending water to the refugium, sending water to the skimmer section. One was the emergency drain in case of a clog of some kind. And so my Clarity only got, at best, 25% of my water. So your fleece roller mat, how much of the water is coming down from the tank is going through it, or how much fleece is it going to go through, because all your drains are going into one common area possibly. That's going to be one of those challenges you have to figure out. We just want to make sure that we have enough filtration to do the job, and also have the flexibility that if you dislike a piece of equipment or you don't like how something's working, you can swap it out with another, or you can remove one and keep going. I mean, how many times have we incorporated tons of equipment? You saw in those pictures here, like with Cody's sump, right? Look at all that gear right there. All that gear. But ultimately, he could get rid of 90% of it and still have a reef tank. It's possible to do that. This is going to be way more nicer because of the automation that's involved, and there's a lot going on there. But realistically, a protein skimmer, inside a sump, and a return pump is the basics of a reef tank. And then everything else we add, like something to add bacteria, something to grow, or GFO to remove phosphate, in the water column, or the algae turf scrubber that's hanging up there on the wall that's trying to grow algae quicker to use up nutrients. I mean, all these things. And then, of course, dosing all the different products we put in there. That's all bonus stuff. HB Photography says, if a piece of coral is partially bleaching, will it have a chance to revive the bleached part? It depends on what type of coral you're talking about, first of all, and how bad the bleaching is. I have had corals become very, very pale because of something I made a mistake with, like overdosing vitamin C one time. I had a lot of corals get pale. But then I figured out what was wrong. I made the corrections in the water column, and they all regained their coloration again. So it is possible for a bleached coral to improve. But if you're talking about like an SPS, Acropora, that has turned bone white and the skin has flaked off, then no. If the skin is still on it and there's still polyps, but it just turned bone white, which has happened to me, and you just leave it alone and the tank is stable, they can regain the symbiotic zooxanthellae inside of its tissue, and it can actually get all of its color back. And I had 3 corals that I got from a friend. I came home. They probably got too cold. Then I put them in a dip, and I probably put them in too strong a chemical. And the next day I looked at all 3 frags, and they were bone white. I was like, oh my God, I killed them last night. I'm such a dummy. And then I was looking at them closer. I was like, wow, they're not dead. They are just white. And so I thought, left them alone. They started to get some color back. And then they grew into colonies. I was like, wow, talk about coming back from the brink. That was super impressive. But ultimately, we need to know which type of coral. If it was a torch coral, they can become pale. If it was a lobo, yes. I mean, different things can get a little weakened, but can recover. It just depends how bad it was, how long it's going on, what caused it in the first place, and if you can get things stabilized fast enough for it to have a chance. And then if you can't save it, if it's completely bone gone, it's best to just snip that off and remove that little bit out of your tank and enjoy what's left. Steve says, I have a 15-month-old tank, and I have continued to have a thick film on the glass that needs to be scraped daily. Any recommendations, parameters in recommended ranges? The thick film, is it whitish? Is it green? Is it brown? If it's whitish, it's bacteria. If it's green, it's film algae. If it's brown, it's too much film algae. It's a nutrient-laden film algae that's usually fueled by phosphate levels that are much too high. So cleaning it often is your best bet to remove it from the water column, but then you want that to be removed either through the fleece rollers, the filter socks, or at the very least the protein skimmer. And then you said they're all in recommended ranges, but I'm kind of curious, like, what level is your phosphate right now? If it's 0.1 ppm or lower, that's good. If it's higher, you probably need to bring the phosphate level down. I tend to feel that once, and then another thing you can do is you can run carbon in a reactor. And by removing phosphate from the system and running carbon, the carbon will absorb a lot of stuff from the water column, and it tends to make the glass stay clean longer. And then a side trick that just happens to be practical is using Reef. That is a food that I sell. It's a powdered reef food that you mix in a cup of tank water and let it wait for 5 minutes. And then you turn off your return pump or you turn off your protein skimmer and you pour it in the tank and let the dust go everywhere. And all the corals are eating and the glass stays clean longer. It's just a weird side effect. I mean, I love it. It's just so crazy to me. I can put food in the tank and make the glass stay cleaner. But I think it's because of the bacteria in that food jumps on the glass and starts eating whatever's trying to grow on it. Protex Remodeling says, I can't keep phosphates up to save my life. Start using a lot more nori, and you'll watch those numbers slowly, gradually rise. Reefkeeper even says use reefroids. Michael says, I don't have 10 friends who will help, and I hope I don't lose. I have my son-in-law. Like, that's 2 of you? No way. 2 people cannot move a 265. There's no way. You need more people. You need a small army of people. Or you need to rent some people. Maybe that's the best choice. Rent some people, give them some cookies and some money, and never see them again because they're going to hate your guts afterwards. You know, the funny part is, when it comes to moving the tank, it takes minutes. It's not a big process. It's not going to take all day long. Yeah, there's a lot of prep work, but then the physical lifting off the stand and putting on the dolly, that was 1 minute. Then you roll it down the hallway and out the door and out to the car, and then you lift it up 30, 45 seconds to get it in the truck. Then you drive to your destination, and then you have to take it out of the truck. It's usually coming out of the truck is a continuous run because you get everyone to grab it, they pull it out, more people get on, you pull it out some more people, and then finally comes off the truck and the last 2 people, and then you just walk it into the house and you put it on the stand. There's no taking a break in between. For some reason, when we take it out, it's done in stages. But when it goes back in, it's a get it off the truck and into the house as quick as possible and put it down and never touch it again. That's how it plays out. Oh my goodness, Hernando is here. He says he's had good success using hydrogen peroxide for cyano and dinoflagellates. For cyano? Really? Huh. Yeah, there's definitely big bucks in that system from Cody. 2 Abyss pumps on the wall right there is an investment. Kumar said, can you tell the details about vitamin C dosing, why and how much and what to expect? So the vitamin C thing was an idea that I guess isn't true anymore. I mean, it was a thing. It was a phase. You know, back in the early 2000s, people were thinking if you add more vitamin C to the water, it would help to make the zoanthids look prettier. And zoanthids were super popular back then. I mean, everyone had to have them. They came in like a million colors. And people were like, I'm going to dose vitamin C. And look, they all look better. And I don't think there was really any science behind it. I think it was more thoughts and prayers. Because you don't hear a lot of people talking about dosing vitamin C at this point. Prodibio sells a product called... What is it called? Hang on, I'm on my website. Give me 1 second here. Coral Vits. I found it. So Coral Vits looks like a tube of orange juice. And when you break it open, you definitely smell the citric acid. So it must have vitamin C in it. However, I found that using Coral Vits in my tank, and my tank's big, tends to make the skimmer foam bubbles collapse. And the water draining down the pipes is crazy loud, like thunderously loud, for maybe the next 6 hours of my life. And because of that, I choose not to use that product just because it irritates me. I mean, I use the other Prodibio products, but that one, Reef Booster and Coral Vits, both of them just drive the skimmer crazy, either shut it down or make it overflow, or it makes the water so loud. It sounds like a freshwater tank. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. So there are some products that use vitamins, and people do sometimes soak their food in different vitamin solutions to add more to the food itself. hopefully to help the fish look even better. But that was a thing. But the thing was, when it came to dosing vitamin C, you had to do it gradually, like vodka dosing. And you'd use a little bit, and you'd use that amount for like a week, and then you'd increase it a little tiny bit and go for a week, and then you'd increase it again. And my silly self, I remember one day I was looking at my tank, and I thought, those zoanthids don't look good enough. I'm going to put some vitamin C in there. And I had this giant jar that someone gave me. It was sitting in my fridge forever. And so I took 3 tablespoons and mixed it in a cup of water, and I poured it in and thought nothing of it. Nothing. It's vitamins, right? Just never for a second. So anyway, what happened was my tank went nuts. And I couldn't figure out why. I was like, why is my tank doing this? I've done nothing. I was like, I didn't do anything today. Why is it doing this? Why are all my LPS like fists of fury, all angry, like bad little broccolis? I'm like, what is happening? And I'm looking at the ORP level, and I'm looking at the tank, and nothing makes sense. It's miserable. And I cannot figure out what I did. So I called my friend Dave. I said, Dave, something's wrong with my tank. Just start asking me questions. Ask me anything you can possibly think of under the sun. And because I got to figure out what I did, so I can solve this to correct it. And, so he's like, did you do this? Did you do that? And, it was like, nope. And finally says, did you dose vitamin C? I'm like, I did. He goes, how much did you put in there? I said, 3 tablespoons. He says, how much do you normally put in there? I said, none. He's like, you wiped out the oxygen in your tank. I'm like, I did? And so that was a long time ago. And so the first thing I did was I took my Vortec pumps and I moved them up to the surface so they chop up air and water and just. And then I ran up to Frank's tanks and I got a big air pump, a big ceramic air stone that I still have to this day. And I ran tubing and I lowered that into the tank so that there was another Vortec blowing the air stone air bubbles throughout the reef. And then I took the cup off the collection cup off the skimmer and made that to a volcano. And then I opened the door to the fish room, and then I opened the garage door, and then I took a huge floor fan for like drying floors, and I put that to blow air from outside into the fish room to get as much air into the aquarium, fish room, as well as get air into the skimmer and get air into the reef itself. And everything dissipated. Everything was okay, and I didn't lose anything. I was very lucky. But I remember after the fact thinking, man, I just put that in there like no big deal. It never even occurred to me that I did it because it's such a benign nothing. And I think that a lot of times we end up doing things like that. We're on autopilot. We're just doing stuff, and we don't even think twice that it could cause some problems. But I definitely made a big mistake that day, and I was lucky that I had a friend who helped walk me through what I did wrong, and I made the corrections, and everything went well. Okay, Steve says that the film on the glass that is building up daily is green. So good, your phosphates aren't too high. It's just a film algae. It comes from your lighting. It is completely normal. Cleaning the glass daily is a actual normal task. It's kind of a hassle factor, but the Reef will make it where you have to do it less often. And you don't have to use Reef daily. You can use it like 2-3 times a week, and you'll notice that your glass is not... Now, this thing about the glass turning green, sometimes our tanks get to a point where this seems to be like excessive. The film algae just grows and grows and grows. And then there's others that are like, I haven't touched the glass in my tank in 2 weeks. And you're thinking, well, what's the difference? So it could be the lighting you have on the tank or the duration of the lighting on the tank. So number one, the lighting on the tank. Let's say you're using T5 lights and not LEDs. T5s put light out this way. LEDs put light down this way. So the T5s are going to hit the glass and it's going to grow the algae on the glass. You may have this time of year, the sun is coming through the house and kind of aiming toward the tank and getting on the glass. But other times of the year, the sunlight doesn't reach it because of the orbit of the planet. And so you're dealing with this now, but in the past it didn't happen. Another trick that helps to reduce the algae growing on the glass as frequently or as abundantly is to dose phytoplankton to the aquarium. For some reason, phytoplankton helps lower that growth, or it reduces the fueling of the growth on the glass. But for now, keep cleaning the glass daily. And other than that, it's just a phase. It happens. I remember a time where I would clean the glass And I swear it was like 40 minutes later, there was a hue on the glass. Like, wow! I go clean the glass again and watch the dust go off into the water column. And I knew that what I was knocking off the glass was food for some of the corals in my tank anyway, so it wasn't a bad thing. It was just a hassle factor. And I kind of feel like that's probably what you're dealing with right now as well. But it's not a forever problem. It's just one of those things. And if you're running your lights a super long time, you could reduce the lighting period by maybe 2-3 hours. Make it, if it's a 12-hour day, make it 9 hours. And you might notice that the issue going on with your glass will dissipate. It'll be less of a problem. Yeah, Mike, I saw what you said about the tank leaking in the bottom corner. There was nothing more I could add to that story. Just be careful, move it carefully, and fill it up with water and make sure it's not leaking. Yeah, your water levels are fine, Steve, so it's just a matter of cleaning the glass. Mr. Reef Buster says, is a carbon reactor required? What's the difference to just putting bags of carbon in the chamber right before the return zone of a sump? I am so anti doing that. I know it's a method, but I just don't think it's a good method. I feel like putting carbon inside of a reactor where water is going down the center and then going up through the carbon and then coming out the top is going to be far more effective because it's active filtration. Where when you take carbon and put it in a bag, some kind of a mesh bag, and you just lay it in the sump, it's passive. Number one, it's just sitting somewhere in the sump. Water could flow around it way more easily than flow through it. So while initially the carbon may make an improvement on the tank, you may see the water become more clear, as the mesh bag gets covered with basically a brown bacteria layer, it's less... it's clogged is the best word. I was going to say less permeable, and you're just not getting the benefits. Plus, carbon's only good for a few days. After about 3 days or so, it's already done its job, and it's kind of sitting there idly by. So it's much better to put some in a reactor, run it for a few days, polish the water, make the tank look really, really good, then take the reactor offline, clean it up, set it aside until the next time you want to use it. That's how I recommend it. But I know that lots of people, including public aquariums, will just take a giant mesh bag that almost looks like pantyhose, fill it up with carbon, and lay it in the sump, or lay it here or lay it there. But it's passive filtration. It's just kind of a putting it in, hoping it makes a difference. It's not going to be as beneficial as you think. Way better to run it through a reactor. And I have a couple articles about that on my website from who wrote it? Let's see. Because I asked his permission to put it on my website. This article is written by Richard Harker, and it is the best article I've ever read in my life about carbon. And then when some website that it was published on initially went down, I got his permission to put it on my website so that information would not be lost. It's a really long article. It's actually 2 parts, and both parts are on my website. Here, I'll just put the link in the chat. Maybe. There you go. I just saw a comment, but I'm not ready for it yet. That was funny. Hernando can move giant tanks with just 2 people because he gets one of those lifts. And, of course, the suction cups. I've seen him do it several times. He tends to have giant aquariums. Of course, Hernando is huge, too. It's kind of cheating. Will Morris says he rented some dudes at Home Depot. Yeah, broadcast feeding is great. It's a really nice way of getting food everywhere. Everything in the tank gets a chance to eat it. The fish can chase it down and try to eat it, but it's like eating confetti. And but then the corals will get to inhale it too. Nope, I haven't heard about dosing milk, but I do remember Dr. Ron Shemek recommended to me once when I had this weird black something on my rock work. I was like, what is that? And he told me it was a type of sponge. And I was like, oh, okay. And I think it was called like chicken liver sponge or turkey liver sponge. And I was like, all right. He said, if you want to see it do its thing, turn off the flow in the tank and squirt some milk at it. And you'll see it suck the milk in and blow it out, the holes. And like, wow, not doing that. But Hernando's talking about dosing milk in here at some point. I don't remember the milk trend. Trung says, can you explain how a sulfur reactor works? I can try. So basically you have a reactor. It's self-circulating. It's got sulfur inside of it, which is a media. And then you're going to have water from your aquarium go into it and then drip out of it super slowly. And the idea is that this sulfur, the reaction, the anaerobic situation of the lack of oxygen in the reactor will sit there and destroy nitrate. And the principle is that if you have one dialed in really well, and I'm planning to put one on my tank soon, so I've done some homework, you get that set up and you can go ahead and you can have lots of fish and you can feed heavily, and that sulfur media and the bacteria within will consume, utilize, and remove the nitrate from the water column. It's not super complicated, and it doesn't take up a lot of space, so that's nice. Hey, Michael, thanks for becoming a member. I appreciate the support. Okay, now I think Hernando's just trolling us. He says, look up milk and honey dosing. I remember someone dosing honey. I do remember one of those. God, the things that we do. Ruben asks, what about ChemiPure Elite? ChemiPure is not something used for dinos or for cyanobacteria. It is a type of filter media combination thing. It's in a bag. Maybe you're talking about the whole, using carbon. It has carbon in it. It has waste consuming resin in it. It's got some GFO in it. It's got a bunch of things in it. That's a totally different process. And usually that is put somewhere inside something. I've even seen people put them inside reactors before. But a lot of times, like the all-in-one tanks, they'll have that stacked tray, and they'll put things in each little cubby, and they can put the ChemiPure Elite in there. But that's not one you want it to. It comes in a bag. You don't take it out of the bag. You just use it the way it is, and it's a 1-month product. Steve says, what temperature do you keep your big reef at? I keep mine 76 to 77. And I used to keep it a little bit warmer, but I've seen no reason to do that. My tank's been growing like crazy, and I actually like that it's lower because it gives me a protection from the tank getting too hot in the event of an emergency, like a power outage that wipes out my AC. I'm going to look this up because I've not heard of this. If I can grab it. Will it let me? No, it will not. I just have to type it. God. So Kumar got some kind of a snail. Oh, I've seen these before. Anyway, he said he got these snails. He says they kind of look like a bumblebee snail, but they're white and black striped, and they're great, and they clean the rocks. Why aren't they famous? I like that part. So probably because of their diet. Oh, it's one of those. It's a periwinkle. That's why they're not famous. I'm pretty sure, last I heard, periwinkles are other snail eaters. They're meat eaters, and may even go after clams and stuff. There's something else. I've got a friend in Bonaire, and she shares pictures of these things from time to time, and she'll show how some snails are predatory. And she has some amazing photos of periwinkles doing some serious damage. So I think that's why they're not more famous. HB Photography says, can Aptasia transfer from one aquarium to another without water contact? Droplets from the air or other forms? The distance? No. They don't just migrate through the air. That would be bad. What if you had Aptasia on your dinner plate? Because I ate in the same room as my aquarium. That would be terrifying, right? No, it's not that. They usually come in on something. It could be you're doing water testing from one tank to the next. You're using a net. You're using a sponge. You're carrying this from here to there. You're putting things down over here. You're putting it over here. You're the different things we do. The cross-contamination is real. And they do come from something, and they can come in very, very tiny. They could be kind of just, I'm not going to say dormant, but just so small and invisible, you're not aware of them. They might be so small, they're less than a hydroid in size, but then they eventually grow and become bigger, and then you're like, oh, how did they get in here? There was none in this tank. This tank was clean. But they can oftentimes they come in on frag plugs, and they come in from other corals. But nope, they don't just move through the air like pixie dust. All right, guys. I think we're going to wrap up here. We've been going for about an hour and a half, so I just want to remind you that today is Water Test Saturday. That means we want to check all the water parameters of our tanks. See, I said tanks because now I have multiples. We want to make sure that all of our levels are good, or if there's an inconsistency that needs to be corrected, I want to correct it now so that my livestock won't suffer. And so I normally would recommend checking salinity, first of all, temperature, just make sure it's where it belongs. And then it's going to be alkalinity, calcium, magnesium, nitrate, phosphate. Those are the basics. pH is something that you should be measuring with a pH probe rather than a pH test kit, because pH changes every hour. It changes every minute, really. And so it constantly is varying. But it rises higher and then it drops off at night. In the middle of the night, your pH is much lower than it is during the middle of the daytime. But if you're watching your water parameters and you're dosing what's lacking, you can get that stability that you need so you can have nice, happy corals that are growing and fat little fish that are always there to greet you when you walk up to the tank. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you again next Saturday. Bye, guys.